Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our advocacy series for NAMI, Tennessee. Yesterday, we heard from many people, some inspiring speeches or conversations from the Secretary of State about the importance of reaching out to legislators. We also heard from Commissioner Marie Williams of the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, who shared her vision of where the department is going and some goals that we're trying to accomplish in the legislative session this year. And we also heard from Braver Angels, Ron Hetty, talking about that it is possible to reach out to your opponents and the people who don't believe the same way that you do and have a conversation, a meaningful conversation that could lead to change. So today what we're going to do is we are going to learn a little bit more about NAMI Tennessee's efforts at the Capitol, what we're working on. And then based on that, we're going to develop our stories because you all have the power to become storytellers based on your experience with mental illness. And whether you're a caregiver, whether you're an individual with a mental health diagnosis, you have an important role to play as a storyteller that can influence change at the state capitol and elsewhere. So we will go ahead and get started. I am going to share my screen with a PowerPoint. Let's see that. And okay, so this first part of the presentation is going to be Advocacy 101, and a little bit later, we'll get into Advocacy 201. So here's a review of our policy platform. And when I say policy platform, I mean the areas where we're going to be focusing on during the legislative session. Okay, first is the 988 hotline. Now, there's not necessarily legislation to create that. That's already been done at Congress. And it's up to states now to put that in place at the state level. The 988 hotline is a number, a crisis hotline, or 988, and just like 911, that you call when you're in an emergency, the 988 line is for individuals in a mental health crisis or a mental health emergency. That could be for caregivers, that could be for yourself. That's already in place and ready to go into effect in July. So where we're focusing our effort is making sure that when people call 988 and a dispatcher answers, that services are there. So that's sort of the framework that we're working around in talking to legislators about what's needed in this legislative session. So we're going to talk about pay increases for mental health providers. And this is $17 million for the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services to pay more money for people who work in the regional mental health institutes, people who are in the state-funded programs that serve people with mental health challenges. They haven't gotten a pay increase in years, and it's creating a barrier for people to get into the business of being a therapist, a psychologist. That shortage is creating problems for us as we try to get appointments with a counselor, a therapist, a psychologist. So we need efforts to encourage people to get into the business. Next, we're going to support funding for more school counselors, psychologists, and social workers. And then finally, support step therapy access to medication, and we'll get into that shortly. So again, the hotline will be for individuals in a mental health crisis. What's taking place now is the training of dispatchers. And the overarching message for us is we need a robust continuum of care in all communities when dispatchers refer people to help. Okay, we all know that services are very unequal in our state. For instance, you might have more services in a big city like Nashville, Memphis, Knoxville, but not so much in the rural areas. And we need to make sure as advocates that all people have access to services. It shouldn't depend on where you live. And so again, this is our push for funding for more higher pay for the mental health providers. Now, it's interesting because the governor had one budget. The governor presents his budget proposal to the legislature with input from all his agency heads, his commissioners, secretaries, so forth. And Commissioner Marie Williams actually proposed twice as much money for this area. So while yes, we're happy that the governor included her request for pay increases for these providers, we would like to see the legislature go further. And that's what we're going to be talking about with legislators in the next few weeks. And as part of a outreach that we'll do with legislators. Funding for school counselors, social workers, and psychologists. There's a lot of talk about this because legislators and Governor Lee are discussing ways to change the funding formula by which school districts get money. And when you look at counselors, right now there's one counselor for 500 students in elementary school and one counselor for every 350 students in grades 7 through 12. And the recommended ratio is 1 per 250. For social workers, that's even a bigger disparity. So right now there's 1 for every 2,000 students, and the recommendation is 1 for every 250. So there's a lot of legislation, quite a few bills that would fix that this year. And then finally, psychologists, the ratio is 1 for 2,500 students, and the ask is 1 for 500. Because we can all agree that our students, and this was even discussed last night in President Biden's speech, the State of the Union address, is our students, our young people are really experiencing mental health challenges as a result of the pandemic, isolation, health scares. So we'd like to see these numbers be reduced so that students have better access to counselors, social workers, and psychologists. Here are some of the bills. This one right here, I just want to clarify, there is a pot of money that the state, like $700 million in TANF money that had not been distributed in the TANF program. And now it's up to the legislature to find a way to spend it. And one proposal right here would be to fund positions in K through 12 schools, which would include school counselors. And then here's a bill that would use the new BEP, the Better Education Program funding formula. Again, that's how schools are funded in the state. And it sets aside more money for student support, such as counselors. And then here's another bill for counselors. So we're seeing a lot about counselors, and we're hoping that more legislation and more discussions will be had around this, the social workers and the psychologists. And then finally, step therapy legislation. And the step therapy is like a protocol, a process that health plans sometimes make you go through when you are prescribed a behavioral health medication or a medication for your mental health diagnosis. So your doctor, psychiatrist, whomever will prescribe you a medication for your condition, but a lot of times the health plan will say, no, we need you to try something different. Well, the reason they're doing that is because they want you to try a cheaper drug, okay? It's called cost containment. But that doesn't always work for people with a mental health diagnosis. And we were really concerned about forcing people to change medications midstream. And so we are wanting to promote this legislation because it would create a pathway for people to appeal a health plan denial of the medication. So we're going to stop right there. And we're going to have a poll real quick about your understanding about legislation. And Roger, can you put up that poll? If you could just respond to this poll real quick, because we want to see where you are as far as your comfort level with reaching out to legislators. And while we are waiting, I just want to welcome those who have joined us and encourage you to grab a pen and paper so we can get into our storytelling exercise, because we're going to be doing that here in a few minutes. And thank you for those who are doing the poll. This is going to help us fine tune our presentation for next year. Okay, and I am going to go back to the presentation. Again, thank you for responding to the polls. So now that you know the issues that we're working on at the Capitol, the next part of being an advocate and a storyteller is learning how to reach out to your lawmaker. So when I say lawmaker, I mean your House member of the House of Representatives and the Senate. So there's a few ways to do this. One is in-person meetings. And because of COVID, that has been, a lot of legislators have not been meeting in person, but that's opening up now. A lot of people are going down to the Cordell Hull building and meeting in person with lawmakers. But there's still some that want to do Zoom or conference call, which we like because there's so many of you that are spread across the state that it's easy for you all not to travel, spend the night in the hotel, and then you can actually talk to your legislator by Zoom or conference call. There's always emails, and then finally, good old-fashioned letters. So if you do want to meet with your legislator, whether that's in person or by Zoom, here's a way to start. You find your House and Senate member, and you can do that by going to the Tennessee tn.gov website, and or you could Google the Tennessee legislature, find my legislator. And when that page pops up, there will be a place where you can type in your address, and you can find which House member, which senator represents where you live. Now, if you're a business owner, or like you work in a like mental health treatment, or like for a therapist office, we have any providers in the group today, you can also type in the business address and find out what legislator represents your business. So that's two ways of finding out who will listen to you and who would care about your issues, because legislators always want to hear from the people in their district, okay? Because those are voters. So when you are planning a meeting, ideally you want to do this in a group setting. We're encouraging you to do this in the framework of a NAMI affiliate, okay? We like our meetings with legislators to be from our affiliates, NAMI Johnson City, NAMI Davidson, And in that scenario, ideally you'd want 3 to 4 people, and you want to determine who will attend the meeting. You want somebody with a good story to share, somebody who feels comfortable talking with the legislator, and then maybe somebody who feels comfortable talking about the issue. That's more the business side of the meeting. So you would call for an appointment. You can also email. Sometimes, though, you can call and talk to the legislative aide. And once you get the appointment, you prepare by doing your research on your issue, and also do some research on the legislator who you're going to be meeting with. Like Google them, look at their website. So when you call or email the legislative aide, and you can, by the way, you can find out the names of the legislative aides by the Tennessee Legislature website. Again, just Google Tennessee Legislature. The aide will ask, so why do you want to meet? What are the issues you want to discuss? And your answer is to discuss NAMI Tennessee's legislative agenda. Okay? Or if you are from an affiliate, if there's an issue that's really pressing in your area, just say, I'd like to talk with them about the changes going on in Moccasin Bend in Chattanooga. So before your meeting or Zoom call, like I said, you want to research the legislator's background, Google them. For instance, we're going to be meeting here shortly with Representative Jesse Chisholm. And the research I've done on him indicates that he's a real estate investor. He got his bachelor's degree from Morehouse College in business administration. Yes, and a master's degree in education from Union University. He's a former teacher in the Memphis City Schools, and he sat, this is important, he sat on the board of directors for the Memphis Mental Health Institute. So there's the connection with mental health. And again, when we meet with him, I'll be the spokesperson, and I've already prepared the message. So you want to know what you're saying before you walk in there. And it's okay to take a piece of paper in there with notes. That's fine, because like I always write notes and potential questions that a legislator might ask, and then I write up the answers. So when you go into the meeting, you're going to introduce yourself, refer to them by representative or senator. You don't want to refer to them as by their first name. That's kind of casual. Even if you're friends with somebody at the Capitol that you've known for a really long time, you don't really want to call them by their first name in public. It's just a matter of respect. Again, explain why you're there, deliver your message. We'll get to that here in a minute with the storytelling exercise. Also, it's really important to say that you're a resource. You might not get the legislator to see your side of what you're trying to explain or what you're asking him or her for, but always position yourself as a resource of information about mental health, as a sounding board, because sometimes these people haven't had any interface with the mental health system, or they don't know a lot about how it works, but a lot of us do, so you can be a resource. And finally, thank them. So here are a few do's and don'ts. It's really important when you're meeting in person to keep your story brief. Now, our storytelling exercise is a little bit longer. We're going to write it out. But when you're in a meeting with the legislator, those meetings are only about 10 to 15 minutes. And you don't want to get too caught up in your story, because you want to make sure and ask for support for a particular issue. Also, feel comfortable. I would encourage you to feel comfortable meeting with the legislative aide. A lot of times they are the traffic cop or the gatekeeper of the legislator's office, and they keep notes on issues that a lot of them will keep file folders on various bills and issues. And so, just to inform the legislator as to what's going on. And so it's okay to meet with the legislative aide. And then finally, thank the legislator for meeting with you. And it's always good if there's something in the news about the issue that you're discussing, forward it to them, because again, you're serving as that resource for them on mental health. Also, you can forward things from NAMI National. If you become a member of NAMI, NAMI National will send you all kinds of alerts and information about what's going on, and you can forward that to your legislator. So advocacy don't feel like you have to get a committed vote from the legislator. You don't have to get them to commit right then and there. Yes, I'm going to vote for this bill. Your job is to educate, never argue. Right now we're in some politically challenging times and there's a lot of divisiveness. Just don't argue. It's you want to cultivate that relationship and not create conflict. Okay. Don't dominate the conversation, let others talk. And I will say that sometimes the legislator will want to do all the talking, and that's okay, because if you feel like you didn't get your points fully across or your story, you can always follow up with an email. Okay. A big thing here, do not threaten a legislator. Sometimes what I hear from people is, well, I'm not going to vote for him or her, or I'm going to fund his or her opponent. Never have that conversation. It's just not appropriate. And then the other thing is, I found that presidential elections, or the whole presidential issue of partisanship and parties at the federal level is very controversial. And we don't need to discuss any of that because we're focusing on the state of Tennessee. Okay. Don't discuss campaign contributions. If you're in a office, legislator's office, you can't discuss campaign contributions because it's actually against the law to talk about campaign contributions in a state government office. Never connect a campaign contribution to a vote on a bill. And here's something really important. If you are sending an email to me, to your affiliate, about the outcome of a meeting with the legislator, be careful what you write. Also be careful what you write to legislators, because those records, anything you write to anybody at the Capitol is a public record and can be requested in a public records request. And you don't want to, the rule is don't write anything you don't want to see in the newspaper. Not all lawmakers sit on the committees that deal with healthcare. Representative Chisholm sits on state and local government committees, not a single mental health care related committee, but that's okay. He still needs to know about the bills we're working on, and he might have a special interest in mental health. You never know. But give them a pass if they don't know about your bills, because they're dealing with other bills on their committees. And I find that when people do meet with legislators or talk to them on the phone or by Zoom, they find out that the legislators are really much more open and kind than we might think of them when we look at media reports. And remember, they're concerned about their communities and they want to help. And finally, you don't have to be an expert on legislation. You don't have to know Tennessee law or how the budget works. You are the expert on your lived experience with mental illness. And so you have every bit the right and the opportunity to talk to a legislator, because you are the expert with mental health. And if you want to look at these tips, again, they are all in our advocacy toolkit, which is posted on our website. So now is the story creation. Okay, I'm going to stop there and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, and again, I will encourage you to grab pen and paper, print out our advocacy toolkit, or excuse me, the storytelling documents, and We'll get ready to go. Access to the slides. Everything that I just said will be in the advocacy toolkit on our website. So thanks, Jen, for that question. Okay, so we are now going to get into the storytelling. So I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so this is something that was developed by NAMI National, the 7 steps to telling your story. And the first part's easy. You introduce yourself. Name or your city. You always want to say if you're a member of an organization, I'm a member of NAMI Tennessee, NAMI Greene County. And the next thing is share how you are affected by mental illness. You're living with the mental illness, a family member, a caregiver, and this brings a real face to mental illness. And then finally, you'll state your issue and position. So for purposes of this exercise, I'm going to invite you to pick a topic that we discussed a few minutes ago. Are you interested in school mental health? What about the access to medication, the step therapy issue? Or would you like to see more mental health professionals in Tennessee? So I'm going to ask you to pick one and create your story around this. And I'll give you just a couple minutes. Okay. And we can come back to this. So the second question is, what happened? What happened before you received the help that you needed? For instance, I can say in my case, my story to legislators would be that my nephew died by suicide a couple years ago, and there were not enough mental health counselors in our county to provide the care I believe that he needed. So what happened was that Gavin had to wait a really long time before he got the care that he needed, before he can get an appointment. And then question number 3 is, what helped? So in this case, if you are a person living with a mental health condition, describe what helped in your recovery, or what would have helped. If you didn't have access to services, what would have helped? The next question is, how are you different today? Share what is going right in your life, or how you are experiencing recovery. Try to conclude it on a positive note that inspires. Sometimes that's difficult. I mean, my nephew is not here with us anymore. So I'm different because his suicide made me realize that there's more work to be done in advocacy around suicide prevention and mental health for young people. So I'll give you a couple minutes to write out that. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know how to do mute on this. Oh, there we go. Okay, I think we're good now. So we'll go to the next question. What is the need or the problem? Mention the problem or need that you want addressed. So in the case of my nephew, I would like to see more mental health providers, counselors, therapists in rural communities. Okay. He shouldn't have to drive 30 minutes to Johnson City to see a therapist. And the sixth question is talk about what will help. In this situation, what would help is paying mental health providers more money so they'll stay in the industry. You know, it shouldn't be, a social worker shouldn't be paid as much as a person who works in a fast food restaurant. We want to incentivize them, encourage them to stay. We need to pay them more money. We need efforts to recruit more mental health workers. Give them scholarships. Help them pay off their college debts in exchange for working in a rural community. That's a solution. And finally, make your ask. Ask your policymaker if you can count on their support, or there might be opposition, but in this case, we're talking about support. Will you support bills that would make it possible to recruit and retain more people as mental health providers? Okay. So how was that? I'd like to hear, see in the chat box. Was that difficult? Did that make it easy? When you go through the 7 steps, does that help you break down your story into more manageable bite-sized pieces? The worksheet helps a lot. Good. Mark, you had a question?
Yeah, no, not a question, but what I wanted to say is that it provides a nice framework about how you can, bring all those pieces together in a short, concise statement or presentation. So I really think that was very helpful.
Great. So Hannah says that it's hard for me, need some time. I find that, and many of you all might find this as well, that the most difficult piece is the story, like, here's what happened before, or here's how I'm different. And keeping that to just a few sentences is really difficult or challenging. So your challenge is to pick one issue. So what you would want to do, there's really no limit to how you do this. Like, you can do this exercise for each different issue. Write it out. It's easier just to have one story for one issue, because if you try to bring in too many issues, it's going to overwhelm the legislator, just as you feel overwhelmed probably. So Jen brings up a really good point. It's helpful because I get almost too passionate, so it helps keep you to the point and not off track. Right. Yes, it kind of makes it more business-like, for lack of a better word. Let's face it, mental health could be an emotional issue. I mean, there was a time that I couldn't get through a conversation about my nephew without crying. And, but you learn over time, and that's why you want to practice this when you write it out. Practice it out loud and see how it lands on your ears. And I think that'll give you an ease of walking through it, talking through it, and it does diminish the emotion a little bit. The other thing, if you have been through a very long mental health journey, and many of us have, I know that you want to capture that entire experience, okay? And because your journey contains a lot of ups and downs. And so what I would recommend is picking 2 or 3 highlights that contrast. Like, this is where I was in a depression. This is just an example. I couldn't work. I had to leave my job. And then when I had access to anti-anxiety medications and medications to help through my depression, I was able to find a similar job that paid even more money and work through my issues with a counselor, with a therapist. And today I'm making more money and I'm really happy. So I find that there is a fear of being too superficial and not honoring your journey. But in fact, if the legislator wants to know more about your story, he or she will ask. And again, you can also always follow up in an email. Denise just says, practice in front of a mirror. Roger says, sometimes it takes me more than one editing pass. I write it out and then go back to see what I can cut out. That's a great way. So one exercise would be just to write it, and then go through, just cross out maybe some of the extra details that don't need to be there, and then highlight what's super important to you. Okay, Mark.
One of the things that I think has prevented me from connecting with them, say by letter or email, is, do they actually read it? I'm sure they probably have a considerable amount of incoming social media and letters and so forth. I don't know how much time they can possibly put to that. So it's, I can follow up with an email or a letter, but how much do they actually read?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. I liken that to customer service for a business. A good business is going to provide a response to your customer service complaint or concern. And look at them as like a customer service also. You're their constituent, you're a voter. I can tell you that you'd be surprised at the response you'll get. I got a personal response from Representative Chisholm, who again is going to be joining us here shortly. He wrote me back, and I expect the aide. The aides will read it. And more often than not, you'll get a response from the aide. And many times they'll print out your email and put it in a folder. So they might have a mental health folder. They might have a solar energy folder, or, lottery folder, whatever, just whatever issues is that they're working on during that legislative session. So yes, they do read it. So I'm going to call on Victoria. And Victoria, yes, you had sent me a private message. What your approach looks good. So
Okay.
I coached Victoria a little bit ahead of time. So
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Victoria Rutledge, and I am the development director, the very new development director for NAMI, Tennessee. And I really appreciate this framework, Elisa, because I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I can get very rambly when I get nervous or I'm really passionate about this. So this really helped me stay on track. And Elisa, tell me if this is the way you want me to do this. I'm just going to read it out in the 7 steps. So I'll just read it to you guys. Hello, I'm Victoria Rutledge from Nashville. I'm the Director of Development for NAMI, Tennessee, part of America's largest grassroots mental health organization, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. As a person who lives with major depressive disorder, I'd like to share my story with you and ask you for your support for easier access to care for mental health services in Tennessee. I've always been a really high functioning and high performing individual with a pretty positive and optimistic outlook. I never imagined that I'd be a depressed person, but I am. And at a certain point, it became debilitating for me. I started seeing a therapist after I started feeling extreme fatigue, just hopelessness and other physical symptoms, which affected my job performance and my general just life and relationships and pretty much every aspect of my life. I was first misdiagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and my symptoms actually continued to get worse at that point. With the help of a psychiatrist who correctly diagnosed me with major depressive disorder, I slowly but surely was able to manage my symptoms through medication. He did tell me this was something that I'd have to deal with my entire life, and I'd have to closely monitor it, but that I would feel like I was truly living my life again soon. I was really encouraged that there were actually solutions out there for my diagnosis. Today, I'm on a medication that regulates my body chemistry and allows me to function and feel balanced in my day-to-day life and actually experience joy. Many people have mental illnesses like mine, but not everyone gets the help that they need. A strong mental health system that helps more people have access to care to experience recovery and relief from their diagnosis is something that is crucial, especially in the state of our world today. Thank you so much for meeting with me and listening to my personal mental illness story. I hope that I can count on you to protect mental health services for the residents of Tennessee.
Yay, awesome. That's really good.
Thanks.
You're getting a lot of applause. I don't know if you can see that. Yes. I like that you spoke with confidence and you kept it positive. You showed the contrast, and it was debilitating, and you were told you were going to have to live with this for the rest of your life.
Yes.
So, but then you're turning it into a positive as much as possible. And the only recommendation I would have in I know we were general in your ask is typically the legislator will say, well, what exactly do you want me to do? Mm-hmm. And the answer might be, in your case, it might be, well, I had access to medication, if that was the case. So please support House Bill 677. We want people to be able to get the medication that they're prescribed and not have to face health insurance denials. So if you're specific with your ask, I think that helps.
Perfect.
And again, I'm here to help you all through this, fine tuning. So we also have Josh, who's our, for those of you who joined late, he's with us in East Tennessee, as part of our crisis intervention team program. And he is a law enforcement officer. I'll tell Josh if you want to explain who you are and what you do. And yes, great job, Victoria. Awesome. Josh?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's gonna be really hard to follow up. Should have went first, that way we could have built. But no, a little bit about me is my name's Josh. I am the East Tennessee program manager for CIT, and crisis intervention is working mostly with law enforcement, but also first responders to respond to mental health crisis. Just kind of diving into a little bit of my background. I was a police officer for about 5 years, 3.5 with a city, a fairly decent sized city, and a 1.5 with a rural county out in East Tennessee, which kind of brings me into my story. If you don't mind if we just kind of glide into it, I'll refer to this person as John, just kind of to protect his anonymity, and probably won't tell you what city he lives in just in case everything goes. But when I worked for a city department, I ran into a guy named John. Now, John and I would deal with each other almost once or twice a shift. He was homeless. He had mental health issues as well as substance abuse issues.
Uh-oh, I think he's frozen. Josh, if you can hear us, you are frozen.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Where did I
Okay.
last leave off at?
You met John once a shift.
Yeah. So I met John and we would talk a little bit. Sometimes I took John to jail. Sometimes we did other things, but John was continually struggling with his substance abuse. He had lost contact with his daughter, and it really ruined the relationships in his life with substance abuse, as well as the mental health issues he had. And some of it was really unhelpable for him, but he needed help. And so in Johnson City, we had, oh, well, there you go. In the city, we had walk-in clinics and mental health clinics. And so we would encourage John to go there because for him, it was a particular issue with getting in the back of a police car. And, it's kind of demoralizing on a level, even if you're not there because you're in trouble. I can not handcuff you and throw you in the back of a police car. It's just, it almost feels like I'm tricking him or he feels like I'm tricking him into something. And so we were able to utilize the walk-in clinics there and kind of connect him to resources. Well, lo and behold, I connected John one time and didn't see him for 2 or 3 months, which is usually a good sign in law enforcement, because if you're not seeing them, then something's usually happened. And a little while later, I saw him walking down the road. I was on my way to a call, and we had all known John. And so a friend of mine, I said, "What's going on with John?" He was walking down the road on the other end of town. He said, "Oh, well, John's clean now. John's reestablished his relationship with his daughter, and he's walking to work." I talked to him the other day. He said in the next couple of months, he plans to get a car. He's really got his feet underneath him. And then after that, I never saw John again. So that was great news. Shortly thereafter, I went to a rural county where I was kind of approached with issues that weren't able to be solved. We only had one response, which was take him to the hospital and wait for a bed. So sometimes I'll wait at the hospital for up to a week before you'll transport somebody. I'd drop someone off at the hospital for mental health treatment and then go pick them up to take them to a facility. And it could be up to, a week. And I would be on the same shift. I'd be the same person to drop them off, come in a week later and transport that person. And so it's really hard. And so my ask would be that we'd have more mental health resources in rural communities, because it is kind of discouraging, and it's kind of like a population that doesn't have as much of a resource as somewhere that might have bigger city, Knoxville, Nashville, Johnson City. Some of these other places that kind of seem to get forgotten in the shuffle. So that would be my ask, is that would there be more mental health providers for rural communities.
Awesome. Great. Let's give him a round of applause. Yay. Okay. So like Victoria, great job. I like how, if you all noticed, they both were comfortable and it let their personalities show through. Because when you talk from the heart, and these issues are very close to us, and it gives the legislator an idea of who you are and what these issues mean to you. So Josh, what you did, a great specific ask at the end. Okay. You introduced yourself. You told a story. You highlighted the problem through a story about John, and you provided that contrast. Here was John before. I was seeing him every day, every shift. And then the after, which was he's clean. He has a relationship with his daughter, and that it's inspiring. You were clear on what helped. Your intervention in getting him the services helped. And how are you different today? Again, you told the story through John, and you explained how John is different today. And yes, so you hit all the highlights, the whole 7 parts of this storytelling exercise. Yeah, good job. Good job. So we have time for one volunteer before Representative Chisholm joins us. I have asked Roger and Denise to do their storytelling exercise with Representative Chisholm. So talk about being in the spotlight. Is there anybody who would like to try this? Anyone? If you do, you can put your name or just put it in the chat box. One thing I wanted to mention is it's okay to read this to a legislator or to have this with you. It's also okay to put this in an email. This could be your email, the body of your email to a legislator. So Mark, are you volunteering?
I am.
Yes. Okay. And I just wanted to welcome Mark. He's one of our NAMI Tennessee board members. So thank you for your service.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. And also I want to give a shout out to Mary Sims, who is our East and West Tennessee regional coordinator.
Yay,
So, hi, Mary.
Yay.
Okay, Mark, you're on
right.
stage.
Thank you, Senator so-and-so. I'm very grateful that you've given me the time to talk with you. I'd like to, I am from Mount Juliet in Wilson County, and I would like to just share a little about myself. And this goes back 60 years for me. I have a family that has entirely, everyone has mental illness. I had a older sister who committed suicide in 2014. I have been in a variety of states and had a chance to look at mental health organizations within those states. And I want to be able to bring that to you and to kind of share a little about that and talk about what it is that I'm looking for. As I said, I have had a struggle with mental health issues for 60 years. And one of the problems that when I moved to Tennessee, the biggest problem that I had was in locating a psychiatrist, someone who could prescribe medication to me, someone who specifically understood the varieties of medications that are out there, the newest medications or treatments that were available. And it was nearly impossible. I contacted over 25 psychiatrists and found that either they were not taking new patients, or any of them were not taking any insurance. So it was all private pay. And of course, this was not something that I could do. So I realized that this is something that a great deal of Tennesseans are not able to afford mental health care, and it's very expensive. And for myself, I've been lucky enough to be able to find a nurse practitioner who has been able to work with me to keep up on the medications that I take, which I'm very grateful for. I guess that I feel almost that was by luck that I found it. And because of it and other treatments that I'm working with now, I'm able to be functional. Before, I was not able to hold a job. I was not able to do very well in relationships. And of course, you know, the problems that happened in my family. It was very hard. But today, with the help of mental health specialists, I've been able to live a stable life, functional, and I'm able to give back to the community. What I'd like to ask of you is that if there is a way of being able to of encouraging or drawing in more mental health psychiatrists, specifically people who can prescribe medications, and find a way that they and the insurance companies would be able to work together to provide them with a higher reimbursement rate, because right now the reimbursement is not really worth their time, so they will go with private pay. I'd really like to ask that you would to find a way of encouraging insurance companies and mental health professionals to work together so that others who do have insurance, even if it is minimal, will be able to find the kind of help that they need. And I really, really appreciate your time. And if there's anything that I can do to help you in this, if I can provide any more information, this is my number, my name, how I can be contacted. And if you need any information, I would be more than glad to talk to you. And I really appreciate your time.
Yay! Hey, let's have a round of applause for Mark. Good job. So again, you hit all the highlights of the 7 steps, but I love that you added a few little touches. You added your phone number. Here's how to contact me. You offered yourself as a resource. And the other thing is, you could have gone through all 60 years of your mental health journey, but you didn't. You just kept it at the high level, the important parts, the before and the after. And to me, the thing was, I couldn't find a psychiatrist. Thank God I found a nurse practitioner. And, you know, what about other people? And I want to make sure that people have access to psychiatrists. You know, if I were a legislator, the question would be, well, what can I do? And I want to make sure that these people are paid more so we can keep them. So that's an influential storytelling exercise. So thank you. Awesome. Awesome. I'm going to pause here and see if Representative Chisholm has joined us. I don't see him on the list, but if Representative, yeah, Representative Chisholm, are you here by chance? Okay. While we're waiting, I would like to see in the chat box, how many of you have ever had an email conversation or a meeting with a legislator? You can just put yes or no. Lots of yeses. You got an email. Okay, so I do want to just comment. You one person said, I sent an email but no response. It's okay to follow up. Now there's a fine line between following up and annoying them. I would say a follow-up maybe once or twice in the course of a few weeks, a month is fine. And yeah, you don't want to bother them every day with an email. Keep in mind that they're dealing with a number of other issues as well. We know that to us, mental health is the most important thing, but as a legislator, they're dealing with all kinds of budget problems, roads, highway safety, other issues. Josh says the closest I've come to is a county commissioner, and we're going to talk about that in Advocacy 201, is where you can take this story and influence your community. So I'm going to.
Lisa, while we're waiting, you had a comment a while back. LaShonda had the question about how do you keep from becoming long-winded when you're preparing?
My recommendation would be to, like I said earlier, just write it out, just write, get it out. Because it's stuck in here and it's stuck in your heart, right? And if you get it out on paper, it gives you the opportunity to just look at it on the piece of paper and see how long it is. And then go through your words and pick out 3 of the most important things that you would want that legislator to know. If you were on an elevator and you had to go from the first floor to the 15th floor, what would you want that legislator to know during that elevator ride? And that's a good way to break down like your most important points that you think would be most influential.
The form.
Amanda says, right? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say the form is a good starting point too. So I love how it tells me 1 to 3 sentences, 1 to 4 sentences. And by that's the great starting point. If it says 1 to 4 and you've got 9 sentences, it's time to edit.
Right. Right, definitely. Let's see. Representative Chisholm might have gotten caught up in a committee meeting. Let me just send him a quick email. To see if join us. Okay. Don't want to get too far into my next area until we hear back from Representative Chisholm. And it looks like we're going to have some time. We have this scheduled through 12:30. So we would have time if you want to practice after I do this next presentation and after we meet with Representative Lynn, who's going to join us at noon. I'm happy to stay here and help you work through your story. So we have a question, when are they voting on the budget this year? So usually that's toward the end of the legislative session. It's in April. So now's a great time to be advocating for more money for healthcare providers. A lot of people are having their day on the Hill next week because the strategy is to get to them as they're starting to get into the budget process. So we had ours a week early, but I will be following up with you all with emails encouraging you to write to your legislators. I will actually have suggested language for you to use that you can cut and paste. So there'll be like advocacy alerts, action alerts as we move forward through the legislative session. Nurses had their day on the Hill mid-February, right? We used to have ours in mid-February, but I moved it to a little bit later this year. Next week is the Tennessee Association of Mental Health Organizations, the Tennessee Alcohol and Drug Abuse Association, that's a shortened word for them. It's TATUS. They had theirs last month. So we have Representative Chisholm yet. Okay. Let's see if I've heard back. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and continue on with the next PowerPoint, and hopefully Representative Chisholm will join us. By the way, this is a great example. This happens a lot. This is the norm because they're meeting with lots of people. They've got committee meetings. They might have gotten stopped in the hallway. When you do have a meeting or a Zoom call with a legislator, just know that it could be delayed a little bit. Roger, if you're able to see if Representative Chisholm joins us on the, and if you want to just give me a heads up to stop, I'll stop the presentation and then we'll work him in. Okay, so we're going to go back to my sharing of the screen. Okay, so we have now created the stories. Now we're going to get into advanced advocacy. Now that you have your story or you are on your way to developing your story, here's some ways that you can take your story and broaden your audience. Here's some tips to communicate your story and also recruit more people to help with your advocacy efforts. So we've been framing this discussion around working with your legislators, but this practice, this storytelling exercise can help you in your community. Okay, this isn't just limited to state legislative advocacy. School boards. What's happening now is a lot of school districts are getting money from the state and the federal government to add more counselors, but it's only temporary money. It's the American Rescue Plan Act money. If you wanted to, for instance, go to your school board and advocate for more school counselors, social workers, and psychologists, you can use this story. You fine tune it by maybe you had a child in the school system who could have benefited from a school psychologist, or maybe when you went through school, you could have benefited from that kind of support. You can always fine tune your story to fit the issue. County commissions. I believe that now that we have this recognition at the state level of the importance of mental health services and supports, I think our next step as an advocacy organization would be to go to county commissions, go to the local community and say, hey, how can we as a community improve mental health supports? Health departments, maybe there's a program that you'd like to do, like an awareness campaign. Law enforcement agencies. We at NAMI Tennessee are starting an effort to engage more law enforcement agencies to have CIT programs in their communities. CIT pulls together stakeholders in the community, mental health providers, NAMI, school officials, treatment providers, and they help come up with a list of resources for law enforcement officers so that they know the law enforcement officers know where to take people in a mental health crisis. You heard from Josh, drop them off the jail or the emergency department, right? But a CIT program in a community will help train the officers, a 40-hour training on how to de-escalate a person in a mental health crisis. And so there's an advocacy effort that you could use your story around to approach your police department or your sheriff's department. Another idea, Veterans Administration, lots of mental health needs in the veterans community, and then your hospital. I've seen a lot of NAMI affiliates have what's called NAMI in the lobby. And that is a program where materials around NAMI and how to contact NAMI are left in the lobby of the hospital or the emergency room area for people who are in a mental health crisis. So you could approach your hospital with this storytelling model and explain why it's important to have NAMI materials in the lobby of the ER. The common thread through all these, and again, it takes some fine tuning and some tweaking, but the bottom line is, here's my story, will you help me? And you also want to show them how you can help them. So another way to communicate your message is a coordinated email campaign. Again, whether that's to lawmakers, the school board. And when I say a coordinated email campaign, I mean like the advocacy alert that I sent out at the beginning of the week. I'm hoping that many of you got it, about the step therapy bill. You will get more advocacy alerts from me, as I mentioned, and that's called a coordinated email campaign. I am coordinating emails with our very large network across the state. And so lawmakers will be getting that at the same time, like a big barrage of emails. That gets people's attention. Next is create a postcard. We got that tip from NAMI Chattanooga. One of their members actually created a postcard where you can write out a little note to your legislator, say, will you please support House Bill 677, which would make it easier for us to appeal health plan denials of our medication. And then sign your name. Thank you, sign your name. And what NAMI Chattanooga, when we were brainstorming around this, they said, have a letter writing party. We pull together people in your affiliate, people in your neighborhood, in your community, and write letters, like hand write letters to your school board, to your legislators. Because while email is effective, we're going back to the days where having that piece of paper in your hand signifies that somebody took time to make that message, to make that connection. And we're going back to a time where those handwritten letters are becoming more important. Oops, hold on. Okay. So when you communicate your message, you also
We've been
want to
joined,
look.
we've been joined by
Okay.
Representative Chisholm.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you, Roger, for that. Representative Chisholm. Roger, can you highlight him real quick? There he is. Hi, Representative. I'm Elisa. And
Hello, how's everybody?
We're good. We're good. Thank you for joining us. How are you on time right now?
I got about 15 minutes.
Perfect. Okay. So Representative, I have been sharing with our group storytelling and how to tell your story with legislators. And so I'm going to ask one of our members to share his story with you and make an ask of what we're hoping the legislature can do this year.
All right.
So, Roger?
Hi, Representative Chisholm. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad you're here. I appreciate
Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate your patience while I work through this with you, practicing telling my story. My name is Roger Stewart. My wife and I live in Nashville, and we've been involved with NAMI Tennessee, part of America's largest grassroots mental health organization, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, for over 25 years. My wife and both of our adult children live with diagnoses of mental illness, and 2 of the 3 also have co-occurring substance abuse disorders. We're asking you to support the expansion of mental health services as 988 is implemented in Tennessee later this summer. Last summer, I came home to find that my son had stopped taking his medications and he had become very depressed. To feel better, he decided to microdose mushrooms that somebody gave him. He was very psychotic, hallucinating, and raving. He was able to tell me what he had done. I searched online and found out that the effects of the drugs he had taken should subside within 20 to 30 minutes. However, over an hour later, he was still completely out of touch with reality, and we needed help. We called Mobile Crisis, and they told us to call the Metropolitan Police Department. We were scared to do that. No parent wants to criminalize their child. We were very lucky to be in a pilot area of Metro PD's co-response model. Police officers came to our home with a mental health crisis counselor. They made the decision to call an ambulance and transport him to a local ER where he was treated and released 3 days later. The treatment we received from the police, the EMTs, and the hospital were all fabulous. Mental health crises need a mental health response. We think that kind of care should be available for all Tennesseans. Our son is now working and fortunately has become stable enough to be able to move out of our house in January. Like all parents, we continue to be concerned for both of our children. We know we're lucky to be living in an urban area with access to services. We're so thankful for the supports that are in place to assist our family and our kids when they need it. But we want to see these supports available for all Tennesseans. Tennessee is experiencing mental health and substance abuse treatment needs like at no point in our history. And we're asking you to please support the governor's budget that provides for the expansion of mental health and substance abuse services, and also consider prioritizing the additional supports that the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services Commissioner Marie Williams requested, but were not able to make it into the budget. I really do appreciate your time, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions about our family's experience.
Well, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I thank you for giving your story, for your family's bravery and everything that you all do. I mean, I thank you so much.
We appreciate everything that you do. And to be honest with you, with the political climate, we feel like you're much braver than we are. We appreciate you standing up for what's right. And that's what we really do. I know that you've got a lot of budget challenges every year and a lot of people asking for money. But if you turn on the news, you're going to see how important mental health is to Tennessee anytime.
Right.
So thank you so much.
Thank you all. Actually, I got a chance to do some work. I worked for an agency that did work with NAMI. I was with the Tennessee Mental Health Association, and I got a chance to come up here to the Capitol to advocate, and that was quite an experience. And I thank you all for keeping that whole thing going.
Yes, well, we appreciate that, and we really love how legislators are now really paying attention to mental health. And if you saw the president's speech last night, wow, major commitment to mental health. And so we appreciate your work in this area. One of the things that we're really promoting is, as Roger mentioned, more funding for mental health, specifically in the area of mental health providers. And I know you don't sit on the healthcare committees, but what they're looking at is the governor is wanting to fund $17 million to give pay raises to people within Commissioner Williams' department. But Commissioner Williams actually asked for twice as much money. So we would like the legislature to consider funding more money for mental health providers. So funding more than what the governor even suggested.
Yeah,
So
I know in that particular work, you all been needing a rate increase for quite some time now. Because even when I was in the field, we were losing a lot of good people to the private sector, and it takes a special kind of person to strap their boots on and do this work. So I really appreciate all that you all do. And I think that it's a conversation that does need to be had about raising those rates a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yes, thank you for your interest in that. Another bill that you're probably going to see come across your
Elisa,
desk.
I
Yes.
want to say something about this particular bill, if I could. And
Oh, sure.
thank you, Representative Chisholm, for being here and sharing. And I had to be out for another program. I'm back, but I do want to say something about the rates. NAMI typically does not ask for money for itself, although we did ask for a budget amendment for CIT 2 or 3 times.
Mhm.
And eventually the money did not come through the budget, but the Commissioner of Mental Health found a way to fund us to continue expanding CIT, which began in Memphis. However, with the rate, with the amount of money in the governor's budget for the increases from Department of Mental Health funding, we don't know that we're included. But I've been given the impression that that money will go to treatment providers, which is great. Safety net providers, we really need that. But we think that our work with bringing grassroots folks into helping and having classes and support groups and others doing mental health awareness and stigma reduction and prevention, and also on the addiction side, that's important too and pays dividends too. And so I just hope that those rate increases go to everybody that's contract agencies and not just certain ones. And if there's not enough money in the budget to do that, I do hope that you and your colleagues would be able to make that happen. So it may not be political to put it out that directly, but I thought I'd take the chance and go ahead and do that.
No, thank you for that. Again, we are continuing having conversations with the governor and administration about budget items. And I do believe that the work that you all do is a very important part of it, because, you know, the health of our state is not just the physical part, but the mental and spiritual part as well. So we definitely have to advocate so you all can get that shot in the arm that's definitely needed.
Thank you. We appreciate that. A bill that you're going to be asked to look at is House Bill 677. And that is a bill, it's called step therapy. What happens now is if you get a mental health diagnosis and you're prescribed a medication by your physician, psychiatrist, whomever, the health plan, your insurance actually can override that and make you take a less expensive drug. Mm-hmm. And it's part of cost containment on their side. But for us, if we have a mental health diagnosis, we could react totally differently on different medications. It could take 6 weeks for the effects to kick in, or the side effects could be really bad. We don't have the ability, you know, we need an expedited way to appeal the health plan's decision to override the prescription. And so that's what House Bill 677 does.
Okay. And who would be?
Let's see. Representative Hall has it in the House.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And no, what was that?
And we're supporting this bill.
Yes, we are definitely supporting this bill. This is one of our core principles that NAMI is access to treatment, which also means access to medication. So
okay.
And
and you never know how medication is going to mix with the other medications that you may have to have. So definitely, okay.
Exactly, and that's why we think it's up to the patient and the provider to make the best decision on our course of medication, mm-hmm. and not the health plan. So.
Right. Okay.
So I see a question from one of our board members, Mark. Mark, do you want to chime in?
Representative Chisholm, I'm really very grateful for all you do. I imagine it's tremendous job. It's a lot on your shoulders, and we really appreciate the work that you do. I think one of the things from my own personal experience, and I know in talking with others, and I'm not sure how it fits in the bills, but I think it's the awareness of, when I came to Tennessee, I attempted to get to contact a psychiatrist for my own medication management. However, I called over 25 psychiatrists who either weren't taking new patients or who don't take, and all of them did not take insurance. So I was lucky to find a nurse practitioner that did do mental health medication. I was very lucky in that. But paying in cash to see a psychiatrist is, $100 to, starting off at $300 for an evaluation to $100 a session for 15 minutes is more than I can pay for. And I think that this, this looks to the insurance companies and their reimbursement rates. It really doesn't pay for psychiatrists to work on with the insurance companies because they don't make a living. I don't know how that's dealt with, but I wanted to bring this before you. And, there may be others who are more aware of how to address the insurance companies and the psychiatrists and mental health providers for medication, because I know I had a great deal of difficulty finding a mental health provider for medication. I know there are so many others who are unable to even get close to getting the mental health medication management that they need. So I wanted to really bring that up to you, just from my own personal point of view. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, Representative, we want to be respectful of your time, and we appreciate the work that you do. Do you have any questions for us?
No. I just want to tell you all to stay encouraged, continue to do the work, and I think we're in fights that we can win, and I think the best is ahead of us.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for your time. Have a great day.
Are you too?
All right, bye-bye. Okay, so what'd you guys think? I'd like to see in the chat box. If you're new to meeting with legislators, not so scary, was it? So again, Representative Chisholm does not necessarily deal with mental health bills because he sits on some other committees. But we brought him 2 or 3 different issues, and now he has better knowledge to make better decisions on those bills when they, when he addresses them on the House floor. So sometimes when a bill comes up on the House floor, it's the first time a legislator has seen it because they don't sit on that committee. And yeah, so we're getting some feedback here, encouraging, and it's important to see it. I see how important it is to point directly to the bill that's being addressed. Yes, definitely. Now, I'll give you a tip. If you just want to establish a rapport and just talk in general about mental health support and your NAMI affiliate, the best time to do that is over the summer, because they're not in session, they're not here in Nashville, they're back home. And that's a perfect time. And I would highly encourage you to make appointments in the off season, is what I call it. You don't have to point to a specific bill. You can just talk in general about mental health and why it's important. So Lisa says, not scary, getting mental health providers who can accurately prescribe the right medication. Yes, definitely. So that's it. That was a really well-run meeting. We got some encouragement and very good. So thanks everybody for taking part in that. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. Okay, so you can see after having that meeting with Representative Chisholm how he was definitely interested in our issues. Well, you can do the same thing to a newspaper reporter or a TV reporter. You could take your story and send it to somebody who works on mental health issues, healthcare issues. Sometimes that means calling the newspaper or the TV station and saying, hey, do you have a reporter that focuses on mental health? We're getting a lot of news stories about mental health these days, especially out of the pandemic because of the mental health effects from that. You can always use that story to pitch them to do a newspaper article or a TV article or a TV spot on that. You can also write a letter to the editor, especially if you see an article in the newspaper dealing with mental health. You can always write a letter to the editor responding to that article, talking about the need for more care or whatever issue it is that you're promoting. Again, here's my story. Will you help me? Will you help me get this across? Will you help me get this information out? Social media obviously is a big thing these days, a big way to get information out. I know a lot of people are interested in being like a social media blogger around mental health. My advice, if you want to start going in that direction, is start following other mental health advocates. One person who I follow is Kevin Hines, and I had the opportunity to do a presentation with him in Florida a few years ago. Kevin is a suicide survivor in that he attempted suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived. And that is a compelling story. Talk about storytelling. And so he calls himself a mental health storyteller. So I follow him to see how he's telling his story and who he's telling it to. A lot of times I'll repost his material. I do some of my work on LinkedIn. LinkedIn tends to be more professional. So I'm getting more of the treatment providers, other mental health professionals. As you're writing on social media, you can develop a hashtag for your cause. The hashtag is a way for people to follow a particular issue. So if you type in hashtag vote for mental health, you're going to see a lot of stuff from NAMI, because that during the election season, our NAMI national office encourages us to register to vote and to vote for people who support mental health issues. If you're advocating for better mental health supports in schools, you can do hashtag kids mental health. And then reimagining crisis. Okay, I put a space between reimagining and crisis, but they're all supposed to be together as one word. That is the hashtag that NAMI National uses around the discussion on 988, that helpline for mental health crisis, or the hotline, excuse me. Okay, so social media, again, create a LinkedIn account. It's free. They'll try to make you pay for the more expensive services, but don't do that. It's very expensive. You can write your own articles there, and you can start developing a following. And that following can help you get the word out about the issues that you're advocating for. Join like-minded groups on social media. Facebook's a good place for that if you want to join. So like I'm a member of Visit Nashville, and I check in to see where all the new fun places are that tourists are going to. That's just an area of interest. You can do the same thing with mental health. Find mental health type of groups and forums, and you can become a member. NAMI Tennessee does Facebook Live events to promote different issues a couple times a month, and those have been really popular for helping us get the word out for important issues. And then finally, communicate your message. I would say read what other people are posting, what they're writing, and watch what's happening with them on social media, what kind of reaction that they're getting. Follow people. We all love getting more followers. at NAMI Tennessee, we're trying to get a little bit more involved with TikTok. That's a younger crowd, and we definitely want to get more young people involved. I think we can all agree young people are a focus, and they've got a lot of energy and things to say. Instagram is good for pictures and just quick messages. Facebook is an older crowd. I forgot to put on here Twitter. Twitter tends to be more just quick news articles, or quick messages. So just start following people who are big mental health advocates. One piece of advice, don't get into arguments on social media. Once you start putting yourself out there as a mental health advocate, you might get some pushback. Be careful that if you're a member of NAMI or an affiliate, anything you say can be used against you or your affiliate. You don't want to paint yourself or the affiliate in a bad light. So don't engage in arguments. I actually used to engage in college football arguments on Facebook, and I have stopped that because it actually literally cost me one friendship because of something I said about Florida State University. Anyhow, so just don't go there. It's really not worth it. And you want to, again, keep it in a very positive light. Recruit more allies. I would encourage you to join a NAMI affiliate. Mental health advocacy is great when you're one person. It's even greater when you're part of a group. And as you can see, we've got the resources to help you fine tune your message. We've got the resources to open doors to cultivate relationships. So join us. You can also unite with other groups in your community with like-minded issues. I noticed Amanda said earlier in the chat box, reach out to religious and faith-based organizations. That's a really good suggestion. You can create alliances with nurse groups, like there's the Tennessee Nurses Association. They've got local chapters, there's local medical associations, your treatment providers, your McNabb Center, peer support groups that might have organizations. Law enforcement, schools, PTA, and Disabilities Coalition, because mental illness is a disability. And I know at NAMI Tennessee, we've made efforts to align ourselves and get involved with the Tennessee Disabilities Coalition because they've got great advocacy efforts. More power in numbers. So I will stop there and see if there's any questions. Okay, so there's a message about transgender legislation, access to care for people who are transgender. And I think there was last year. I'll have to double check. So at NAMI, where we have an interest is like mental health. So how do transgender issues affect mental health? That's where we would get involved, or watch a bill. So I'm not sure about that. I think Roger said that there were 10 results. Okay. So that's something that I could look into, certainly. Oh, yeah, anti-LGBTQ bills here in Tennessee. Yes, and that tends to be the case in other states. And it's unfortunate. Last year, one of our really popular sessions had to do with teaching people in the LGBTQ community how to talk about mental health, because they are, I forget the statistic, but more likely than the average person to attempt suicide. And that's something that we need to be aware of. NAMI National definitely has come out with materials about that. So thank you. Roger says, is it more important to address House bills or Senate bills or both? Both, because for bills to pass into law, there needs to be a House bill and a Senate bill. And the way it works is the House passes the House bill, the Senate passes the Senate bill. And if there are differences in the bill, they negotiate it at the end and pass it and then send it to the governor for signature into law or veto, hopefully signature if it's a good bill. So you want to reach out to both the House sponsor and the Senate sponsor. Each bill requires somebody to file it, and that's called a sponsor. So which of the three bills that you highlighted needs the most attention or has the largest opposition? Okay, that's a great question. Sometimes you might get asked by a legislator, well, who is opposed to this bill? And usually that question is asked more of the lobbyists, like I'm a registered lobbyist at the Capitol. You might not know that. You're there as an advocate telling your story. That's fine. If you could ask that, you can always send them to me. I'm happy to step in. The most opposition is going to come from the step therapy bill, the bill that would allow a quick process to override the health plan decision on medications. Guess who would be opposed to that bill? Well, I want to see in the chat box. Who do you think would be opposed to that bill? Insurance companies, health plans, insurance. They want to save money. And I wasn't going to get into all the particulars of this, but I can because it does bring up a good point. This bill has been filed for several years, not only here, but in several other states. This is a national issue. And last year, the legislature decided to send it to a summer study. And so the bill has come back this year with a change. They are removing TennCare from this bill because TennCare needs the ability to come up with some cost-cutting measures, some efficiencies, and TennCare is there was some concern that this bill, if you automatically were allowed to use the most expensive medication, that would cost TennCare millions and millions of dollars. So that argument was used to kill the bill last year or to delay it. So there's an amendment this year that would allow TennCare to be removed from this bill. And that's unfortunate, but the bigger strategy is that then the proponents of this bill would come back next year and add TennCare in. So, and that's just one strategy. A lot of times you don't get what you ask for the first time. So you have to break down the bill into small pieces and then come back. So, well, ideally, that's not what we would want. TennCare people, TennCare enrollees and members need access to medication and shouldn't have to jump through hoops. They actually have a fairly decent appeals process already in TennCare. So I'm hopeful about that. But so yeah, to answer your question, the medication step therapy bill is the most challenging. Yeah. So we have a few more minutes before our next guest, which is Representative Susan Lynn. And we're going to, with Susan, excuse me, with Representative Lynn, we're going to be a little bit more casual. I would like you to hear from her. She's been a really big mental health advocate, and this is going to be more informal, so it won't be the structured storytelling. So, and I'll lead that conversation, but I would just like you to see how a more casual meeting with a legislative might look like. Okay. Yes, Amanda, thank you for pointing out the step therapy includes multiple types of disease. That bill isn't just for mental health medications, it's for epilepsy, cholesterol, all kinds of stuff. So do we have any volunteers to tell their story? No one? Okay, I'm going to give you another piece of advice here. When we're talking about access to healthcare providers, if you have an object that you can show them, or like if you're telling your story, if you have an object or something that illustrates what you're trying to say, a picture paints 1,000 words. So when I was speaking about my nephew who was having trouble getting a therapist in the community, he had one, and that person quit and went to the private sector, right? And so my nephew said he was assigned a different therapist, and he said, I don't want to do it. I don't want to have to tell my story. So this is the, okay. I'm going to cover the person's name. This is the appointment card for my nephew with his new therapist, who he didn't go to. And 18 days later, he died by suicide because he didn't want to have to tell his story again to another provider. That's pretty compelling. So if you have something, just something little, maybe a picture of your loved one who has been struggling with mental illness, or a before and after picture of yourself, anything like that, a picture can paint 1,000 words. So, okay, so I understand that Amanda is stepping up to volunteer. So Amanda, thank you. And if you want to unmute yourself.
There I am.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I have to pull up my piece of paper.
You're fine. You're fine. Roger, I think that so I'm getting a call from somebody at the legislature, and I need to kind of like disappear for a second. Can you yeah, I need, can you just kind of monitor things for a second?
Yes. Please, Amanda, whenever you're ready.